Good evening. As many of you know, I'm a chaplain and was ordained a minister in 1989. I know my dress usually, those of you who know me, is quite different than the ministerial garb of a suit and tie. When I put down organized religion in the late 90s, I gave my collection of about 300 ties, all silk or cotton, to my sons and to other dear friends of mine. They probably still have many of them. So today I decided I do have a collection of robes, which I have purchased over the years, and you can believe I got very inexpensive, and if there are ministers out there, just get in touch with me. I can set you up, but I decided I don't attend church that much. I love church, but for some reason I don't attend. I'm busy with work, but I took one of the robes out and I just decided to make it a part of this presentation. This is the 2021 presentation, which I do almost every year during Black History Month, Black History Proper. I've named it for several years. I've been interviewed and it's been on radio talk shows, in newspapers and what have you. And basically, I think that the whole of African American history has, in the last 50 years, have gone from just a bat of a swing to just like you're batting at gnats with a fly swatter. And let me say what I really mean here. I think there's a reason why America is so sick. And we have had some recent events with the January 6th debacle, uprising, and so much before that, and especially the last 4 years. But actually, the last 240 years when this thing was put together. My premise is the sickness come from then, because a way that you lay a foundation is the way your house is going to stand or not stand. And thinking back, we were taught in elementary school that the country started in 1620, the Mayflower coming to Jamestown. Yeah. Bringing the pilgrims. Come to find out, a year before then or some months before then, in 1619, we were brought to these shores as Africans and enslaved. if you start off on the wrong foot, you're going to pretty much end up on the wrong foot. And what has been perpetrated from that time to this has been the same kind of order that was set up then. And I am not saying that you cannot change in mid-road, but nobody from presidents on down or up have decided to change. Nobody have stepped in and say, this shit ain't working. And eventually, we're going to come, and some say a race war. No, no, no. It's a class war, and it's spiritual warfare. If you look at it, they are rising, white-bodied people are rising against each other. It is the have against the have-nots. It's the protectors of the haves. A lot in the Republican Party. But understand it's not parties, because you can jump parties. Parties jump themselves. Black folk used to be Republican. From Lincoln. And many of my relatives died voting Republican. They didn't even vote for Kennedy. And it's okay, because parties jump parties. And that's what has been done. Is, this is the Republican part of the day is not the part of Lincoln. It's the party that started out with Goldwater. And the South turned from Democrat to Republican. So basically, America is sick because she has never acknowledged, and I can say this because we're supposed to be in a Christian country, and that's where the sickness comes from, is these religious folk are the ones perpetrating the sickness, talking about patriotic and loving the Lord and hating themselves and their mama and anybody who doesn't look like them at the same time. So basically, the sickness comes from we missed something down the line. What have we missed? We miss putting together true history. I remember in my time in dealing with my people, and my daddy was one of them, you didn't have to catch him. If something came up, men like my daddy and uncles, they were going to tell the truth. Got them in trouble sometimes. But they were honest, because we are a truthful people. America is sick because she has never taken care of what was put together in colonial times to divide and conquer at the same time the classes of people and the Negro captive. The truth have never been told about our history and the history of what really happened in America. And the reason I go here is because that U.S. history book that's taught to our children, that was taught to us, is just downright impeccably wrong because it does not include the truth. And more and more, since my day, more and more, especially after places like Texas began to do the history books, the real history that was in it has been distorted or totally taken out. So now we're sick because we have not been true to our children nor ourselves about what really happened, starting with 1619. And you can see when the 1619 project started, these church folk, along with Trump and his boys, fought it like hell. And these are church folk. You know, they supposed to preach the truth every Sunday. I'm hard on church folk. I've been hard on church folk for two reasons. I was a teenager. I was brought up in a sanctified holiness church called the Apostolic Faith in Portland, Oregon, and yeah, we still dealing with them. I ain't in it, but we got the deal, and if that's just it. But they put a book out, and they talked about organizations, and I didn't realize that I was in an organized religion. That sort of rubbed me wrong, and years later it got me in trouble with that church. I got kicked out twice. The other was when I was 15, and King came out with a letter from the Birmingham jail. Whether you know it or not, it was written for the white ministers of the day. It was an appeal. And basically, he was very smart in appealing to their Christian values, which he knew they didn't have. So, it's almost like this whole thing of Christianity is a counterfeit. And it is. Because the Christianity that my ancestors knew, even up to the time of me growing up, black folk could live some Christian values. My teachers, my mama, my daddy, my family, everybody in the neighborhood, oh man, that was real Christianity. And I come to find out it's not so much westernized Christianity, because Christianity, you cannot impound people and inflict harm and enslave them. That is totally against the principles of what a Christ talked about. And you can bring up Brother Paul if you want to, and I'll challenge any preacher. Paul was not God. And I know where you're coming from. But basically, I saw my black folk live some Christian values. Okay? And so, basically, King was looking at the fallacy of what religion or Christianity wasn't. So, basically, what should have been along in the history books is the true history of America. And I love Howard Zinn, who finally wrote it, but just tell the truth. It is motivational. It is purposeful. It is all-encompassing for all of us, all children, black or white. And we sit up and talk about diversity and white privilege and fighting against racism. I don't even get into that. You have to do the first things first. America is sick, and talking about diversity and I don't see no color, lion, demon, and all that has nothing to do with anything when we pass over what is and inclusive. What I believe is inclusive diversity, inclusive culture diversity. See, we left out the culture. Now, I know Thomas Paine wrote that melting pot, what have you, the melting pot concept. But what America really has, and we had it out with one of my professors when I was in college about there is no culture in America. Well, okay, that's why America is sick then. And for 2 weeks, we didn't learn anything because we were battling. It was myself and 2 other black women, and we would not let it go. Hell no, you're not going to tell us that we ain't got culture. Y'all might not have culture, but we got it. We still African. But it has not been looked upon properly. If we do it properly, the history book that I spoke of, U.S. history, would be twice or 3 times as thick. It would take a full year to properly teach U.S. history. How do I know this? Because, and is it possible? Yes, it's possible because we had the same old history books. You know, I talk about in my book how the times that we had to gather the books from the white high school. They would come in a big truck and we unloaded them at our high school, and they were 3 to 5 years old, and that's the books we got. But we didn't worry about a thing. We took those books home and cleaned them up and came back the next day. We had the paper bags on the cover. We had made paper mache. He erased all that nigger shit and all like that because the white kids knew. See, the white teachers were telling them, okay, these books going to the black school next year, and they filled them up with everything. But I tell you what, when we got to school the next day, you couldn't tell. The books were looking brand new. Everybody, and we would go to each other's home. I remember and help each other. That's how you met certain girls and what have you. So what you think you're doing me an injustice and a disfavor, and I'm gaining in favor amongst our people. And so basically, every class that we had, the English, the science, the social studies, I was in course. Some of my friends took sharp. Whatever we took during junior high and high school, it was a history class. they taught us the history of science in terms of who we were. So not only did we learn about George Washington Carver, but we learned the sad story about Dr. Charles Drew, who discovered plasma but was left to bleed to death because they weren't taking a Negro to the White Hospital. You see the stupidity in this country? Because it started off like it did. When you got to music class, chorus, I know something about that. Miss Ware and Miss Foreman. They started, Miss Mitchell, the English teacher, these people started Black History. By October, you had your assignments for Black History Week at first, and then it turned to month for February. So you were studying who you were all along, and especially in history, because Mr. Hall had it where he was inputting, if you're going to study about slavery, he was sure going to tell you about John Brown and Nat Turner and Denmark Vinci and everybody else they didn't teach you about, and how there were 100,000 or more, my count is, for greater uprisings and escapes and all like that. So then you understood that we never got an instance to where we just bowed down and we were Uncle Toms, and you were taught about Uncle Tom in a way that you totally understood that you wanted to be an Uncle Tom. Some of you know what I'm talking about, because it used to be black folk who didn't know. See, some of us are taught by white folk, and white folk get little pawns in. Well, Uncle Tom was no good. He would please the master. No, Uncle Tom was almost beat to death. But what the dumbass master did not understand, every time he beat Tom, Tom was standing in for 4 or 5 enslaved people who were escaping that night. Every time he did Tom in and put Tom in shackles, somebody was getting by. The whole village of enslaved people were going to the smokehouse, and they were eating better than all the monks.